This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying time is here. That's right. We're talking about It Chapter 2 on Kill by Kill. Well, greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal, Patrick Hamilton, coming to you once again from the beautiful riverside of Derry, Maine. This is the Kill by Kill podcast, where we're dedicated to celebrating the least discussed component of any horror film, the characters. And we're going to unpack all the goriest details of 2019's It Chapter 2 in the hopes that a loser club member's untimely end is just the beginning of the jokes we might make at their expense. And as always, there's only one person I trust to help me pry that head spider off of my own. The one, the only, Gina Radcliffe. How are you doing today, Gina?
I'm doing great. Would you like a fortune cookie?
I would love one. Now, there's not some sort of weird chicken baby inside of this, right?
No. You got the tentacled eyeball, which I was delighted to see. It's my, because we love the tentacled eyeballs. If you're watching Alien Earth, the eye creature is
the stealth lead character
is a breakaway
fan
favorite of Alien Earth.
It does so much. Yes, I don't know whether or not they cribbed that subconsciously from It Chapter 2, but I was very excited to see its return and understand that apparently they're the same universe. I don't really know how that works. I don't want to scare you though, Gina, because we are not alone. That's right. We have a special guest. Now, you may know her as a writer for many an outlet. And of course, the co-host of the Losers Club podcast. And now, most importantly, a returning champion here to Kill by Kill, the one, the only, Jenn Adams. How are you doing today, Jenn?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on to talk about this movie. And my fortune cookie has a tiny little bird fetus in it. So.
Bird fetus is an underrated fortune cookie filling.
Right, exactly. Not so disgusting. It might get you, but I'm not sure what kind of damage it'll do.
I mean, you crunch it, but the bones are so new that you probably swallow it.
That's true. Yeah, it's very light also.
It's unlike that one-winged bat that just keeps flopping around like a real failure.
Just in a circle.
Right. So here's the deal, folks. You knew when we were going to cover Stephen King for an entire season. Thank goodness we're the first and only podcast to do it. Jenn,
just breaking new ground here.
Breaking new ground. No one else has thought to do it yet, so we're very proud of that. Secondly, you knew that very early on in the show's progress, one of the first new movies we ever covered was the first It film in 2017. And we did that immediately after it came out, and we had a lot of first reactions to it. Really enjoyed it for a lot of reasons. I urge people to go back and listen to that episode. I think it covers it pretty well. But at the time that 2019's It Chapter 2 came out, I felt like, and I don't know, Gina, you can back me up here, we didn't want to rain on people's parade or join the chorus of people gleefully stomping on it.
Yeah, I think this was one of our first, it's just fine. How do we handle this? How are we going to get an hour out of it's fine?
Yeah. I do think it is worthy of discussion to how it ends up here. And part of that being that its worst sin is that it's not as good as chapter 1. It simply isn't. And for a host of reasons that I think we'll get into, because I think they're revelatory to how the first film works so well. And because of that, the second film works at a deficit, because so much of the meaning it might have derived is actually just in the first film.
Yeah, and I remember when we became aware of the choice to split the timelines, because if you've read the books, you know that we weave back and forth through the adult and child timeline. And I was very skeptical of that. I was like, I don't know how this is going to work. And it works really, really well for the first one. And with this one, I think it just doesn't work as well. I think a lot of the magic is in those kid years. And so they try to kind of shoehorn that in here by adding the kids back in. And it loses a little bit of its charm, I think.
I agree with you. I think it's one of those things where they sacrificed the chapter 2's ability to work at the level it needs to in order to make that first film what it is. And let's just remind ourselves how big of a phenomenon that was. Because in order to make that first movie something special, they had to reimagine it for the big screen. And in so doing, in my opinion, it retains a lot of the heart and the horror, and something they couldn't predict at the time. It was a legitimate phenomenon for that particular time. It just landed when people needed it to be what it was. And, it's not a surprise that Warner Brothers and New Line wanted to finish out the story. It was only a matter of breaking down the adult half of the tale into something that worked for audiences in the same way that the first film removed the adult component and really focused on those young characters. And I think in terms of like the producing and the executive staff, in their minds, they're going, but ultimately, so many of those kids were unknowns. What people love about that movie are the characters. And all we're doing is just aging them up. I mean, it's the same names, but with adult faces. But this is where I think you kind of come back to how the book is structured and the magic trick it plays. Because I would argue that all the kid stuff in King's novel is the stuff people remember.
Right.
There is very little about the adult story that anyone comes up to you and says, I just read it. And you know what my favorite part is when the adult Bill has like an affair on his wife, and then she shows up and is just catatonic, and he drives her around in a bike.
Yeah. Well, and
no one has ever said that in the history of the world.
No. And half the adult stuff is just them remembering being kids too.
Right.
So, yeah.
And emphasizing, kind of how, even though they're successful as adults, they're still kind of just unhappy and haunted by their trauma.
Yeah. And so in a way, I think in their minds, like if you can bring over enough of the kid elements to it, you can still have your cake and eat it too. Because now you can explore these new elements that they didn't have time or budget to explore in the first film and attach it to these adult characters and their discovery of what happened. But that comes at a price, because in the book, it all happens in tandem. It's all in concert with one another. Here, we've already experienced these characters discovering who Pennywise is, finding each other, learning to trust one another, deciding to take on Pennywise, and succeeding. Yeah. So when you do it again, it gives the impression of a been there, done that the book avoids by just mixing it together in a bouillabaisse. And I rewatched the first chapter, the first film, just to see if I wasn't hallucinating. It just works on a charm and a wavelength of its own. The story that they broke for that first film really does make it a highly successful motion picture. Is it episodic? Yes. Is the second one episodic? Yes. Is it over-reliant on jump scares? Yes. Is the second one over-reliant on jump scares? Yes. It's just that the first one does it better because I believe they had more time and a wider array of people actually working on that script and project development. And in the second film, you're just left with Buscemi and company. And I think the man and his sister and their production team have a lot of strengths. I'm not taking that away from them, but I don't think they had as strong a handle as what this film needed to be as what led up to them taking over the project from, another director who, Fukunaga, I think, broke this story. He and his writer kind of like figured out what to do with it and built a very strong base, built the look of the movie, built the feel of the movie. And then at the end of the day, he wanted to spend a couple more $1 million than New Line and Warner's were willing to spend, which seems real fucking stupid because this made $750 million.
Yeah, wasn't it up until Sinners, the most successful horror movie of all time?
I think so.
I think so.
And then of course that got canceled out just recently by The Conjuring.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
For better or worse.
For better or for worse.
I was going to say we had a good run.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think ultimately in so many ways, like 2017 was another one of those crazy banner years for horror. Because that is also the same year as Get Out, if I'm remembering correctly.
I think you're right.
And Midsommar, I believe.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken.
So like so much, it comes in waves. You get a whole bunch of movies in a horror cycle where some years you have great things dotting the line. And then you have some years in which it just seems like wave after wave after wave of people want this and the movies meet that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, a good year for horror, I think is good for the genre itself. Like a rising tide lifts all ships. All ships. Sorry,
and
not
shifts,
all and
if
ships.
We're being
yes,
honest.
But I sometimes I think we take the wrong messages from those big successes.
Yes,
and I worry that that's what's happening here. And I think one of the lessons we took from the success of the first It is let's just make Stephen King adaptations. Let's just do it, and let's not take a lot of time to interrogate what a Stephen King adaptation should be because there's an art to it, and that's why so many of them fail. So
yeah, I also think another one is let's let Gary Dauberman write a Stephen King adaptation. He's obviously very, very good at this. And chapter 2 would tell you he is not. And in fact, I actually was kind of happy that we did not return to this until after seeing his version of Salem's Lot.
Oh, yes.
Because the thing that It Chapter 1 gets in spades, that it really understands and takes pains to illustrate, is that the problem in Derry is not just the fact that it's got an interdimensional murderous clown who wakes up every 27 years to cause havoc and eat people's fear and their arms. It is that people live with the knowledge that every 27 years, something truly terrible is going to happen, either all at once or over the course of several weeks. And if they simply allow this terrible thing to happen, they'll be allowed to live their lives, quote unquote, normally, when it is, in fact, poisoning the well of the town.
Yeah. And you just hope every time it's not you that gets caught in the meat grinder.
And that's not something we can appreciate here in 2025.
Yeah.
That if we simply just allow terrible things to happen without giving voice to them and saying, hey, this is wrong, then the marauders will pass you in the night and everything will be okay.
Yep.
We're unfortunately very much at the apex of being told if you don't have anything nice to say about particularly vile people, don't say it at all, which is a real interesting place to live.
Yep.
But Doberman's ability to retain that in chapter 1, because he is the last person to touch the script, but certainly not the first to develop it, or really the people who broke the script to the shape that it needed to be to get greenlit. They had a very strong idea of that. And I think Doberman's idea of a Stephen King story is character. It's not the worst idea, but that's all fine and well when the story isn't called, let me look this up again, Salem's Lot. And you reduce Salem's Lot to 6 characters.
Yeah.
And here, I really do feel like it's at a crossroads where it wants to dabble in the thing that's very successful about it, chapter 1, and that Derry is poisoned, and that the people who live there are changed because they allow this to continuously happen. They sacrifice the young in the hopes their young will survive. A very Vietnam era idea that Stephen King just layers into this script. And it instead decides to focus on characters who are simply the older, less fun versions of the kid characters that we met and fell in love with, and then sprinkle in those kids as much as we can before they change, because my God, any second now, they're going to start to look extremely different than they did in the first film.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
And I think it kind of highlights that some of these adult characters are duds. You know, I think one of my biggest problems with this is how they treat a couple of my favorite characters. I say favorite, all 7 of them are my favorite characters. I love them all dearly. But so we've got so much humor lying with Richie and Eddie, and that for the most part works. I really like their relationship, but it just kind of, we have to add those moments in to keep the story from just kind of sinking down into despair and darkness. And it just, it feels like little bubbles coming up to the top for air, whereas in the first one, it does feel a lot more seamless.
I think it really helps that, you know, you have Hader in there in the Richie role. And I don't believe the adult cast is miscast in any way, shape, or form. I do think they're given a deficit in terms of their responsibilities. And I also feel like there are sequences in which the tone completely flies off the rails. For one, I'll just come right out and say it. The tone issue for me is when they just decide to abandon the drama and discovery of these characters, finding these memories, to all of a sudden become a rapid fire Zucker style series of bits that you get in the secondhand rose sequence, where it makes fun of someone's stutter by having Stephen King do dad jokes riffing on what starts with B. And that sequence lasts too long and should never exist. That's not when I need humor. I don't need humor in that moment. I need humor to break tension so that it can then be reinforced. And that to me feels like Muschietti does not know how to balance these tones with this new dynamic. The penultimate example of this, and the thing that even at the time people were just kind of, I would say, with a sense of worthiness, just really angry about, is the angel of the morning needle drop during Eddie's experience in the basement of the pharmacy. There's no precedent for it. It's not a callback. It's not something that, like, there's stuff leading up to that may or may not work, but that's like a payoff that is completely tone deaf to what is, I might remind everyone, the story of an interdimensional clown who eats children every couple of generations.
Yeah. That part, it makes no sense. I keep trying to piece it together because, I want to give this movie the benefit of the doubt because the story really means a lot to me. I love these characters. I love this book, but I cannot figure out what that moment is, what it's about.
I mean, I understand on paper, okay, Eddie is afraid of what he can't control. He is afraid of grossness and disease. He has been programmed by his basically Munchausen syndrome mother to fear the world. And as such, this isn't, he would not choose to do this of his own volition. So he goes down to this basement and then he meets the leper again. Only the leper now, in the dark, mind you, looks about 10 times worse than he looked in broad fucking daylight in the first film. And I don't understand why. I don't get what the point is to make that less realistic when you go for hyper-realism when it comes to spider legs coming out of Stan's head later on. You have to pick one. And I'm not sure that this movie ever picks one to go down.
I will say I like the Stephen King cameo quite a bit. I don't necessarily think it's the cameo itself. It's just I love Stephen King so much. I always say he's my favorite person I've never met. And I like him. I like him as a microcosm in this moment. I agree with you that it doesn't really fit and it kind of takes us out of the stakes of these walking tours. But I do like seeing him show up and just kind of being a little hater, I am over the joke that he writes bad endings. I could go on a whole rant about how I disagree with that also. And that's another joke that is like pervades this movie. And I'm like, give it
too
a
much.
rest.
You can do that once and maybe you can do it twice. And if you feel like it's an actual joke 3 times, I don't think 6 is what I would choose.
And if you do it, you have to make your ending really, really good also. And I don't think we're doing that here.
Well, I think this is one of those situations where they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. And part of that is trying to fix some of the structural issues of it and not try to fall into just, I'm going to recreate the book because that's what people have read. Because if people wanted that, they wouldn't have shown up for chapter 1, which transposes things to 1989. And I think to great effect.
Me too. Yeah.
I don't think that movie is so steeped in 80s culture that it's dipping into King's particular brand of nostalgia. I think it's just putting it in a place and time that it wasn't originally intended to, but makes sense for the movie you're making now.
Yep, I completely agree.
With one great 80s reference, and that is New Kids on the Block. And in here, they find like a half dozen variations of the New Kids on the Block edition to throw into this and say, like, does this work?
Yep. No, you need a new joke because it's a different movie.
You need a new joke.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it does a disservice to the characters who are already working at the deficit of not being the kids. And also we saw a movie with all of them where they learned all of this and now they've forgotten it. And it only makes sense when you weave them together, which begs a question that I don't know the answer to, but I'm wondering what both of your opinions are. Gina, if in 2 years they were to say, we're going to put It 1 and 2 back in theaters, only we're going to weave them together in a way that evokes the novel, would that solve the problem?
I think that it would. I think, as Jen was saying, one of the reasons the book works so well is you're kind of shifting between these alternate timelines, and because one of the elements of the story, the adult part of the story, and they do that here. Although I feel like on film, it's not quite as convincing that they don't actually remember they don't actually remember each other. They pretty much just entirely blocked out the entire experience with Pennywise. It's just a sort of extreme trauma reaction. But it makes more of an impact as it's all starting to come back to them. And so I think that works a lot better, on paper with the dual timelines.
Yeah. Yeah. We meet them as adults also. So as they are remembering, we are learning stuff. So we don't have to pretend that we don't know and just wait for them to remember.
I think part of this is that it is a refraction of how chapter 1 works. And like I said earlier, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the structure of chapter 2 that isn't also wrong with chapter 1. It just happens to work so much better. Now that we know a lot about these characters, chapter 2 then starts to reintroduce their childhood to them, but we know their childhood, which sometimes which should make this feel more nostalgia, but it almost feels like chapter 2 becomes a tribute film to chapter 1, which I don't believe is its intention.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of rehash. It's a lot of here's what here's what you missed in It chapter 1
previously on. Yeah, it's like Silent Night, Deadly Night too.
Exactly. It's like the dog having flashbacks and The Hills Have Eyes too. It's a bit of that, and inherently, like the kids' version of these characters can't go anywhere. They can't leave of their own volition. They simply don't have the power, means, or ability to beat feet, and all the adult characters do, and most of them constantly play at, all right, now I'm leaving, and then 10 minutes later, they're walking in the door of the most unpopulated bed and breakfast on the face of the planet.
Yep. They just get the whole thing.
They just get the whole thing to themselves. And the lobby of this place, we never meet. Like, it's not important who runs it. It just becomes weird the 6th time that someone walks through the door of the place and no one else works there. You're kind of like, what is you can just go behind the bar and drink?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have time to think about this, but this movie is 2 hours and 49 minutes. So it does leave you plenty of time to consider what's going on. And as such, as much as I like these actors and as much as I like many of their renditions of these characters, it gets a little repetitious. And then I think we confront another element, which I do feel is a problem with chapter 1, and it's repeated in chapter 2. And that is Mike is forgotten about. He does not exist.
Oh, yes.
He is ancillary to the action when, to a certain degree for chapter 2, he should be at the center. But because he hasn't forgotten his childhood, he doesn't have to go on this road to discovery, but he also doesn't have to be killed so all the white characters can then rally around his corpse.
Yeah. And I would say that is my biggest problem with this movie. And I will say, I think he's forgotten in chapter 1, and I think he is straight up done dirty in chapter 2. I really hate how they kind of turn him into a soft antagonist at the end. Everybody's yelling, "Fuck you, Mike." And I'm like, no. Mike is the heart of this. Y'all had to come back. He's the one who sacrificed his life to stay. I get very protective of Mike, and I really, really hate how they make him like kind of deceitful in this second one. And then they take what his ultimate power of the book is unifying the group.
Yes.
And they give it to Stan in the end.
And oh my God, this is the other.
Yeah, that's a distinct change from the book that I don't like. I mean, it's like you don't have to make Stan's suicide heartwarming. No, it is, the start of the cycle of horror for them. You know, he got scared. He reneged on his duties to his friends. I mean, it's not to say, oh, fuck you, Stan. It's, I think most people in Stan's position would take that route rather than face us again. Yeah. But
he got a face full of deadlights. I mean, Bev brushes with the deadlights. She gets a touch hypnotized and floats a little bit. Stan has his face being eaten while the deadlights appear in front of him. It's a miracle he's a functional human being. And the point of him dying is that he's a perfectly working human being up until the point that confronting it is reintroduced into his life. And it is so overwhelming. The only way he can deal with it is to leave this mortal coil. Those are stakes. And I'm sorry, it's a very understandable reaction to something that is very improbable and overwhelming.
And it's just, from the start, their circle is broken. Yeah. The odds are against them. And then turn this into some sort of, but the strength, you don't need me. The strength was in you all along. And it's like, no, don't do that. No. Yeah. I mean, Jen, you may have slightly more insider information because of your show, but I feel like it looks that Welcome to Derry might correct that a little bit in some way. The sort of, for whatever reason, we don't know what to do with Mike in these in these movies, and it's like, I don't know why you don't know what to do with Mike,
because he's great,
right? I mean, it's it's pretty cut and dry what role his character plays in this. So I don't know why you're treating him like he's just this sort of auxiliary character that the plot doesn't really need. So I do get the impression, just going by the trailer, that maybe that is corrected a bit in the show, but that remains to be seen.
Well, and I think, and I don't know much about the show to the point where they just released a date, so now we can actually put in our coverage of it. But I mean, the obvious thing for that is the interludes, and just doing a series of either the interludes from the book or new interludes. And I think some of it is going to be set in the 60s, I believe. But yeah, Mike is kind of the narrator of all of these interludes. And so in the book, it builds a sense of safety and trust with this character. And we don't have any of that in this movie. And then when he does I'm going to say betray them because that's the way the movie is framing it, then we don't have any goodwill towards this character either. And it's eternally frustrating. Now, I also want to be very clear. I'm not one of those people that says, please don't change the source material. I really like it when directors and screenwriters like take a Stephen King book and make their own version of it, because the book is always going to exist. And a lot of Stephen King stuff does not literally translate to the screen, but you have to retain the heart of the story. And Mike, in a lot of ways, feels like the heart of the book, and we just kind of throw him away in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, he gets the last word in the book,
and I feel like somewhere along the lines they just forgot that this character is necessary, and they double down in the weirdest way on shit I didn't care for in the book. And certainly doesn't have much place in the movie, namely the Bill, Beverly, Ben love triangle that isn't. I don't care for it in the book. Yeah. I didn't care for it in the miniseries. It's one thing when they're children. It is another thing when Bill is a grown-ass married adult. And he's like, is it time to kiss this girl? And you're like, I know why you wrote that on paper, but when you got to the day and decided to film it, that's when you said, do we need this when we could be investing in characters that matter? Like, no one gives a fuck about this non-existent love triangle between these three characters.
Well, and I wonder, too, if that is another thing that gets lost when we lose the parallel nature of the story, because when we have just seen young Bill, Bev, and Ben kind of have this love, or this unrequited love from Ben and the postcard and the poem, and then immediately go to them as adults, I think it does hit then. But here, like they barely have any time together, too. So it's like we haven't established these adult actors with enough chemistry in the story for it to even make sense. Because, like he seems pretty happy with his wife, and she's from Teeth, which is a fantastic movie, too. So you should not cheat on Jess Wexler.
Especially when you refer to her immediately as Teeth. Because she got teeth down there.
Yeah.
It's a great movie to love. So there's nothing wrong with it. The other thing is, like, if you're going to choose a director to do a cameo in this, what wheel of fortune did they spin to come up with Peter fucking Bogdanovich? The guy made a horror movie in 1967, and it's barely that. It's more of a thriller about a guy who assassinates people at a drive-in movie theater. It's not horror for horror's sake. And just to have him whisked down out of nowhere and just erudite himself into this and tell our Stephen King stand-in that his endings suck. But only for the first time, because then it will be told to him 5 more fucking times.
Well, and it's not like there is a shortage of directors who have adapted Stephen King either, so there are like 20 plus people you could choose. Like there's a whole documentary made by just people who have adapted Stephen King movies.
This is a very true statement. And I don't know if they all weren't available or they all said no, or Peter Bogdanovich just had the right 8-ball of cocaine that week. But
exactly. Could be.
Where I do think the movie does a good job of adapting where something is kind of left unsaid in the book is Richie. I think this is the smartest move that chapter 2 makes, and it's not overplayed and it's not underplayed. That being said, I don't think we can talk about Richie without talking about another one of the elements that people really bumped up against at the time, and that is the gay bashing opening of the film.
Yeah.
Now, one of the functions of your cold open preamble here is to establish the dangerous nature of Derry and Pennywise. Now, Pennywise has just woken up, and the last time he went to sleep, he did so in a very defeated way. You don't know that when this incident happens in the book. But we do know it as watchers of the movie. And I'm not going to say that the solution to this is to have him attack another child, sort of transposing the sequence underneath the sports bleachers, because Gina, I don't know if you remember this, trash under the bleachers makes me hot.
Yes, absolutely.
But student bodies reference, everybody. Okay. Because I think that would have been too similar to the last film. But I also think it does Pennywise, in terms of our fear of him, a slight disservice to pick up what is essentially someone else's leftovers and just chomp on him while someone else watches and screams. And then, like, that's not mentioned. Like, that guy's alive. So
yeah,
I don't have a problem with introducing this with Derry is so terrible that it gay bashes people in 2019. I think there are elements to that people guffawed at the time, the way back time of 2019, where they thought this is people who are complaining about this are the people who are complaining about anything, whether it's Captain Marvel needs to smile more, or they shouldn't have women only, showings of Wonder Woman, that whole cadre of fucking idiots. That being said, just a few years later, it retains all the punch, because everything that is happening there is stuff that's fucking happening. To timestamp when we are talking about this, just this very week, we had 2 young black men who were lynched in Mississippi. This is not science fiction. I didn't come out of a time traveling DeLorean. This shit just happened. So,
well, and that scene is based on a real murder in Bangor. Also, the murder of Charlie Howard that happened in 1984.
Right. And that's just one of those things that when King writes the book, these things are much more hot button topics, whether it's gay bashing or domestic abuse, which at that point has been covered a bit in TV movies and on Donahue, but has more relevance and cachet in the society of this is something that needs to be confronted. We're not talking about it. And unfortunately, we're still talking about it because it's still a fucking problem. But dramatically, it can sometimes feel like this is territory that we have trod upon a few times at this point. It might not have the sting and the sauce that we might want. And that sucks, because that stuff still happens. It didn't go away.
Yeah.
But I think there was an element of the audience at the time that felt like, hey, this is a bit much, right? Because we're beyond this as a society. Little did we fucking know.
Well, and it also kind of has an element of tragedy porn too, which I think we were talking about a lot in 2019 in the wake of Get Out. Also, of like, we can present Black people on screen without making their lives tragedy. We can do the same thing with queer people. I think I like, it's hard to say I like the scene. I don't mind its inclusion here, because I do think it represents a grown-up type of evil in this town, like you said, that keeps thinking that if I just ignore the bad shit that's happening, it won't touch me. But we just forget about it. We don't interrogate this. We see very little of the town itself in this second one. And so it's like this happens, this scene with Bev happens, and then we never mention either of them again. Yeah, they really, you mentioned this earlier, Patrick. It's really diminished from just kind of doing away with the whole, the rot goes deep in the town aspect of it, which is a classic aspect of King's writing. Yeah. I mean, speaking of Salem's Lot,
I think that was kind of revelatory to my consideration of chapter 2, because Doberman just really seems to ignore the town element.
He's very uninterested in certain aspects of the story. And I'm fine with the more overt love story between Richie and Eddie. But I think that it does ultimately take away from some of the other interesting aspects of the story.
Yeah. And I think part of the reason I like it so much is just because James Ransone and Bill Hader are so much fun to watch with each other also. Like, not necessarily conceptually.
I would agree with you there. The problems with the movie are not casting.
No.
The one thing I would improve on the cast is I would cast Jerry O'Connell as Ben. That would have been really fun.
Yeah, I do think the I don't even remember the name of the actor playing Ben. He's a little bit of a, I'm handsome.
Yes. And he is very handsome.
He is very handsome, but that is pretty much the only notable thing I can say about him.
Well, and Isaiah Mustafa got into the business being like the hot guy in soap commercials. So it's not, it's not like the movie's full of Vogos or anything like that. But that being said, Mike, at least when he's given the chance to be on screen, is given a lot of interesting things to do in terms of character, not in terms of like forwarding the plot or the story, but he seems crazy. He drugs his friend. Like he does a lot of desperate things because he's confronting a problem with a limited time window, and so much is against him to convince these people that, 27 years prior, they killed an interdimensional murder clown. That's really hard to do. And whereas Jay Ryan, must convey the fact that he is now hot. And earlier, he was carrying some extra pounds.
And still loves Bev, too. That's the other.
Yeah, you know what? It's not science fiction. Looking at Jessica Chastain and going, you know what? I could work with that.
I'm into her.
Yeah, that does not seem like it's hard to accomplish.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
It's just like, I do like that sort of homophobia element to it, which just would have been so verboten to do in the 60s to 80s version. Whereas it feels vital and interesting to layer that into this. I wish Bill Hader got more of an opportunity to explore that versus try to be afraid of the Paul Bunyan statue. And that's just one of those things that only works in the book. And even then, you're kind of like, are we serious about this? It doesn't, it's the hardest thing to get past. Well, it's not the hardest thing to get past in the book. That takes place in a sewer and someone runs a train.
Yeah.
But that's not.
We shan't talk about it.
It's not necessary to discuss here. Okay. But in terms of scare sequences, right? The moments where you replace the creature from the Black Lagoon with like the leper, that kind of works. Or when Bev visits her old apartment and there's the lady who takes off all her clothes. It's a classic Stephen King. If I can't frighten you, I'll disturb you. And if I can't disturb you, I'll gross you out. And they go through all three steps. And that, I think, is the most successful scare sequence. Whereas,
and I remember trailers of that. It was just that scene too, because they were like,
I think that's probably to me the highlight of the movie, and just how uncomfortable it is. And I'm not even talking about oh no, naked old lady, but like just like when she's just kind of freezes for a minute, like that's unnerving.
It really is.
It is a sequence that feels like it was constructed well. How do we build?
It feels like a nightmare.
Yeah. And it's not really pulled from the book. So this is an element where we are kind of going outside the bounds of the story and making it work. And I think we just try to take some other swings later and it doesn't quite work.
Whereas someone got, that bug up their butt that we have to make the Paul Bunyan thing work. And I don't think it does. I did enjoy, however, Gina, the silver bullet like swaying in the background of everyone else.
Yes.
That feels like someone was like, you know what we need to pull from is silver bullet. And
I mean,
it is
a great choice.
I mean, I think that, the Paul Bunyan scene, at least in the book, is just sort of, it illustrates the sort of irrationality of childhood fears and how it, like, to give you a personal example, I used to be terrified of my grandmother's basement and I could not tell you why. I mean, maybe I need to, get a therapist to work it out of me. I don't know, but like she would send me downstairs to get something out of the freezer and I would just start having like heart palpitations. I did not want to do it. And, when I got older, I was like, oh, this is stupid. I'll just go down here. But like, even as an adult, I still felt like a little like just, tingle in the back of my neck having to do it. And it's like, this is really stupid, but I am scared. You know what I mean? And like, you can't explain it. And, and I think that there's a certain element where, he does feel very silly about being afraid of this statue, but he can't help it. He's afraid of it. He can't get past that.
I just don't think they can visualize it appropriately.
No, it doesn't. It works better, in your mind's eye. And Jen said this. It's why a lot of faithful adaptations of King don't always work very well, because something that sounds horrifying in your imagination, turns out to look pretty silly because that's how someone else imagined it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I also don't really mind CGI that much, but there's a lot of CGI. There's a lot of CGI monsters in this one. And this is in bright daylight. And that is just really tricky to pull off.
It's one of those things where, because I've seen all the movies Machete's seen, I'm sure a lot of teens and young people in the audience probably hadn't at that point seen John Carpenter's The Thing. So when you make a reference creature out of Stan's head with spider legs, and to my mind, what they create is genuinely disturbing. It is one of the better creatures in the entire film. And
I agree.
I'm great with that. Do I need Hader to then go, you got to be fucking kidding me?
Just in case
it's a hat on a hat
about the thing.
He hats on a hats a lot of the stuff in the movie. And I think it does a disservice to a lot of the good work a lot of people are putting into it, whether it's his actors, whether it's his, creature makers, whether it's his effects people, whether it's his set dressers. I just don't, it feels like he doesn't trust it. And the one thing I don't think you can aim at chapter 1 is that there were a lot of people going, I don't trust this material. I don't trust these performers. I got to hedge my bets. Everyone bet big that this could work. And they were right. They trusted it. And somewhere, maybe it was because it made $750 million that all of a sudden, chapter 2 goes from being this, wouldn't it be fun if we got to do this, to you got to do this in less than 2 years. It's got to come out on this date. you got to have big names in the cast, and it's got to do chapter 1 numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, we haven't really gone to the plot, and there's a reason for it. I'm not entirely sure there's a plot. It's the same plot as the first one, only they have to remember what the plot of the first movie is.
Literally, yes, yeah. Yeah, and you know, we haven't really talked about Pennywise that much because there's not that much Pennywise in this one.
There really isn't.
I think if you took, I wonder if you took a minute count from chapter 1 to chapter 2, it might be the same amount of minutes, only you're adding a half an hour more movie onto the film. And so his absence is felt a lot more. And there's this trick the first movie plays where you're not sure that every character that you meet isn't just Pennywise in disguise. You know, I was of the belief that it would have been fun if the guy who owns the pharmacy is secretly Pennywise, and Mr. Kane, that Eddie's mom is secretly Pennywise, and these characters that we meet that, you know, they might actually be Pennywise in disguise. And this movie just kind of abandons that as an idea entirely.
Yeah.
And I'm not particularly sure why. It has so much more runway, but I do feel like it just spends a lot of time trying to wrap its mind around Bill dealing with the loss of his younger brother. And I'm like, but that's the first movie.
I was going to say, he kind of dealt with that already.
Right. We don't need another kid in danger
I
here.
just, as nice as it is to have a Dr. Giggles reference in a movie, and I'm a big fan, again, I've seen that movie, and sure, 95% of the audience had not. But I don't know that long although the movie kind of needs something to happen there.
Yeah,
I don't know that's what it needs to happen, and I don't know why it needs to lessen the return of Henry Bowers, which is something the miniseries makes work.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, somebody, maybe a Doberman, who knows, thought, you know, let's have a scene in a hall of mirrors.
Yeah.
And then they kind of constructed, you know, this little boy, which, you know, it could have just been a dream, a nightmare he was having. It didn't have to be an actual literal child getting chomped on.
I mean, what is the point of that? If the point of that is Pennywise needs a snack, make that the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, it feels like, you know, Henry Winkler's death in Scream, you know, which is like, we got to have another kill in the middle of this thing. You know, we have to have another set piece, you know. And I think, you know, we talked about the recurring joke about how King is bad at endings. It feels like the movie is very preoccupied with the ending of their own film. And so a lot of this time, especially with Mike's plot line, is spent trying to justify or explain the ending. And I mean, I kind of just like the bonkers nature of King's ending. It's like, yeah, there's a giant turtle that pukes and the other thing is a spider, and let's go for it. It doesn't necessarily have to make sense because, as you said, we're talking about a murder clown who eats children and then goes to sleep. So, you know, I don't need that to make logical sense. I don't need to really even have the ritual of Chud here, like, or really understand what it is. And I think by spending so much time trying to explain that, we do lose a lot of the momentum.
I agree.
So I just happened to look onto YouTube, and someone created a cut called "It Chapter 2: All Pennywise's Scenes," and it totals 9 minutes and 30 seconds.
So this movie's 2 hours and 49 minutes. So 2 hours and 40 of it are not spent with it. And it shouldn't be an hour, I might add, but you might want to double it.
30 minutes? Yeah. Especially because I really love Skarsgård's performance.
Yeah, and I think that's the main thing that even people who did not like either of these movies can certainly point to that and say, okay, that worked really well.
Yeah. And I remember when Chapter 1 was coming out, there was this conversation of, can anyone top Tim Curry can anyone make this their own character, or is Tim Curry always going to be looming over their head? And I think he managed to do that. And here it's like we forget about the one element of this story that has pervaded popular culture. Like, I see this clown everywhere now with people who I know who are not horror fans. Like, people know him.
I do think the cultural phenomenon element of this is slowly... you see Pennywise's face, but it's almost as if the trauma of this needs to be reinvigorated. Maybe Welcome to Derry will be the thing that does that. Because for the vast majority of the audience who showed up to chapter 1, I think, based on their age in the screenings that I went to, they were culturally aware of what Stephen King's It was more than they were fans of the book, right? They were told it is his scariest tale that involves a murderous clown trying to kill kids. Yep. And that was enough for them to show up that first weekend to the tune of $123 million on a $35 million budget. To say that this wasn't a massive cultural phenomenon, I think it is somewhat getting lost in the mix over time, if only because the killer clown space has only gotten more crowded.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I went to see this with people who didn't know anything about the story, and it was so much fun to watch.
Yeah, I took my daughter and I went to see it. She had not, she knew who Pennywise was, but she hadn't read the book or anything, but she enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah, they did too.
I mean, I remember telling this on our chapter 1 episode, but several people, young people, got up in the middle of the movie and left. Not because they didn't like what was happening. They were too scared. It affected them too much. And I don't think that's super common. It took a really long time for that to happen again for me. One of it being the substance where people just, they couldn't take it. It was just overwhelming. So I think that's a rare bird. And I do, again, this might feel like an hour-long complaint session, but I do think it needs to be examined. Not that we think we could have made a better It Chapter 2, just that the It Chapter 2 that was made was fine. And the only problem with it, really, it's not as good as the first one. Yeah. And structurally, I'm not entirely sure how that's possible.
Yeah, it's interesting that in thinking about the Salem's Lot remake, which I don't very often because it is almost already faded out of my memory for me.
This is the first time I have thought about it since we talked about it on air.
But they're of a piece because, he's just very... he has a central story to tell and does not seem very interested in why this place, why is this happening here? Like, it's not random. That's the whole point of both stories is, that these are fertile grounds for these terrible things to happen. And they're just really just doing away with that aspect of both stories just really makes them less effective, less haunting, and just really reduces the impact on the audience.
Yeah. And I mean, I would argue, speaking of characters, that Derry is a character in this story. Salem's Lot is a character in that novel. Castle Rock is a character. Like, King is so good at making his town's characters in the story. And I think I agree with you. I don't ever want to just shit on a movie, or just complain. And there are a lot of things that do really work for me here. But I think if we don't interrogate why some things don't, then we will keep getting the same things. And I want to see good Stephen King adaptations because there is a lot of meat on the bone. There are a lot of stories that really mean a lot to me, and I want to see them done well. And if we keep just kind of making the same mistakes, then we're doing a disservice to that source material.
I mean, not all of his stories have that this town's going to hell element to them. But I think if it is a component in the material you're adapting, that is something you had best confront. Like, certainly in the adaptations we've gotten so far this year, that being The Monkey, Life of Chuck, The Long Walk, and Running Man, unless I'm missing something. Those aren't this town's going to hell stories. So that's not something I'm going to be looking for in those adaptations. It is one of those things. It's this town's going to hell is so compelling that Insomnia is one of my favorite King novels.
Oh, that's a good one. That catfish monster.
And I finished Dreamcatcher, not because I wanted to, but because it took place in Derry, and like I had to make sure I didn't miss anything, because if it's going to have any sort of Derry content to it, I have to know what's going on there. I didn't want to, but I did because of that.
Yep.
I do hope that what you say, what you're speculating about Welcome to Derry, that it's mostly going to focus on the interludes.
This episode brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can get a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help find you options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Is true, because I think that there's such compelling and horrifying little stories, and just you need them to add to the mythos, and how this is a town just kind of powered on tragedy. I mean, sure, if they want to add some new elements to it, fine, that's probably inevitable, but I do hope that there's at least a nod or two to those stories.
Yeah, I want to see Dick Halloran show up from the Black Spot. Yeah,
the Black Spot is, I think, why I'm interested in Welcome to Derry, because I find that short story so compelling, and to tie it to so many other things, I think is an interesting way to go. And if they fuck it up, I think it's going to be unforgivable.
I think so too. I'm trepidatious about that. I think the reason I'm interested in Derry, one, because of my undying crush on all Skarsgårds, but we have Bob Gray in this movie too. Was a really interesting choice. When we see Skarsgård pulling his makeup off, he's wearing those suspenders, and that is a pull from the novel that I wasn't really expecting to see. And I think that there were some, I don't know if it's reshoots, but rewrites that kind of made that a smaller piece of this story, because we just see that with Bev and then it doesn't go anywhere. So I wonder if that's going to be part of Welcome to Derry also. And I'm interested in that. I'm interested in seeing more of Miss Kirsch too, and figuring out that relationship.
I agree. Any other elements that we haven't covered that you just won't feel right unless you say it now about It Chapter 2?
I really like the Bev scene in the bathroom. I like the blood. I think I like that carrying over from the first film, this idea of someone who has grown up with abusive men and is finally breaking through that. And I like the recurring imagery of blood. So,
Gina?
I think the second time around, I probably liked it a little more than the first time, which is surprising. I was fully expecting to find more fault with it. I just think that the issue comes down to a sort of disinterest in, to me, what seems to me very essential aspects of the story. But I mean, at least the parts that the movie is interested in, such as Eddie and Richie's relationship, are done pretty well. It is compensation.
I agree. I still like this movie. I just wish I loved it.
Yeah, me too.
And I do love chapter 1. I watched it before consuming this, and I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't some sort of recency bias, or that I was just so happy to see it on screen that it just carried me through the screenings that I had of it previous. But I'm happy to report it still really works. And I would say that chapter 2 just works.
Yeah. Chapter 1, I think, is probably the best they could have done with that, with the material. Chapter 2, I think they could have tried a little harder.
Yeah. Well, you're facing the consequences of robbing Peter to pay Paul.
I absolutely, wholeheartedly believe that, Jen. I think to make the best chapter 1, they ended up making they hobbled chapter 2. And because if you were to structure the book in the same way, I don't think it would be the book that everyone rereads or talks about in that fashion. And I completely understand it. For one, it makes that a great movie. Capital G, great. And as a result, it makes the sequel lesser than, simply because it has to play by a different set of rules while still delivering an audience what they've now established is an it movie. So we'll see how this adapts in the show, which when this comes out will only be a couple weeks away. But I am interested to see how that works. I mean, King on TV is real hit or miss. Jen, I don't know your feelings on Castle Rock.
Mixed, I would say.
Yeah, that first season, I liked some characters. It has one incredible, give it all the Emmys episodes.
Yeah, the Queen, I think.
Yes.
Oh,
which is just
I could cry right now.
A
thinking about
stunning piece of work. Speaking of crying, when the losers walk, when they find the hideout, and then the kids climb down the ladder when it's supposed to be the adults, I did start crying. Just add that to the list of Patrick cries too easily now.
I cried 3 times in this too, so you're not alone.
It is affecting. I do love these characters. I say these things out of love, not because I think I'm better than the movie. I feel like I want the best version of this because I did get one best version of it.
Yeah.
But we must confront and cry over choosing our own death venture, and that's where we decide of the deaths portrayed in this film. If we were forced to die in one of those ways, what would it be and why? Of course, you can be beaten up, thrown off a bridge by homophobic bullies, be saved from drowning by a homicidal intergalactic clown who then bites your heart out. You can commit suicide in a tub and make sure to write it on the wall in your own blood. This is a sequence that scared the shit out of me while reading it, scared the shit out of me while watching it on ABC television, and is weirdly underplayed here. I think to set up the whoop-de-doo at the end of the film, and you're like, I didn't like that either. You couldn't be eaten by Pennywise off screen. A bunch of people were eaten by Pennywise. You can have your throat slit by Henry Bowers. You can be stabbed by Henry Bowers. You can be pulled into a mirror, your head crushed and also eaten in a I don't know what is carnival thing.
Mm-hmm. Like a house of house of mirrors.
You can get stabbed in the chest. That doesn't hurt you so much. But when you get an axe to the back of the head from Richie, then you're really done. So you can be impaled through the back by Pennywise with what you were told was a monster killer. Or you can be deflated into a pancake.
When you put it that way, it sounds silly.
I know.
It's what happens.
Yeah, it's we didn't get too much into that. It is very silly. But,
yeah, I would prefer the book ending.
I understand that the book ending was probably like, yeah, we can't. There's no way we could do this on screen. But what they end up doing is pretty silly.
And this is where I feel like the development of this just wasn't allowed to cook the same way the first one was. And that's why you just get, I hate to say it, like a little half-baked. Jen, you're our guest, so you get to go first.
I think I'm going to be impaled by Pennywise in the back in this cave because I want Bill Hader to mourn for me. I like him.
Sure.
And I have a crush. So, and also it's a moment of triumph. You think you just killed the monster. No, you don't. But then everybody cries for you. So,
yes. Yeah. And he got to be brave.
He did. He was
brave in the first film, but he had forgotten that he could be brave.
Yep. And I kind of forgot that he was brave in the first film too. So, I liked remembering that. Yeah.
Gina, what say you?
I'm pretty sure I actually chose this exact same death when we did the Black Phone episode, but I'm gonna take an axe to the back.
Oh hell yeah! Axe to the back of the head is the way to go because your last thought is, wait, what? And then you're gone.
It's like, are you Bill Hader?
Wait.
Are you the soap commercial guy? What?
Like I love you a step.
Just give me one phrase like the Californians. I'm taking axe to the back of the head. It's the way to go. I don't like heights. I'm not falling off a bridge. I don't want to have my face bitten off. But, as much as I wouldn't like to be walking around town with a corpse driving a Trans Am that no one seems to notice.
I mean, if you gotta,
Yeah. But that's the way to do it. Folks, follow us on Patreon. That is where you're going to find extra bonus episodes of Kill by Kill. We're going to have question and answer, bonus episodes you won't find anywhere else, and movie commentaries. Then you can follow us on your socials at Kill by Kill Pod, and rate and review us on iTunes. Talk back to us on YouTube or on Spotify. I love hearing from people every week about what they feel about the episode. Please join the conversation. Now, Jen, where can people find you out there in the World Wide Web?
Well, if you want to hear me talk endlessly about Stephen King, which I am wont to do, you should check me out on the Losers Club where, I talk about Stephen King a whole lot because I love him. You can also hear me talk about female killers on the Lady Killers and about true crime adaptations on Murder Made Fiction and about the boys on the Girls on the Boys podcast. If you follow me at Jen Ferratu, I'll post it all.
Jen, I bounce on the boys all the time, but I'm very interested in Gen V. Do I have to watch all the boys to watch Gen V?
No, they do connect, but they also stand on their own. I really, really enjoyed the first season of Gen V. I was pleasantly surprised, and I'm really excited for the second season.
I might give that a whirl then. Yeah, all right, I needed to talk to somebody who knew their business. Speaking of someone who knows their business, Gina, where can people find your fixins on the internet?
I write about movies and pop culture on my newsletter, GinaWatchesThings.ghost.io, and I am occasionally on Blue Sky and Instagram under Gina Does Things.
Do it today. People will check it out. Don't worry, folks. The body count will continue for myself and for Gina and for Jen. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.